All right, first things first, so settings. I usually lower the effect opacity and turn off other players' skill effects. Don't worry, over time, you'll learn enemy animations by sight, and if you're just starting out and getting used to the game, you can leave them on for now. It's not a huge difference. The reason I turn them off is because target acquisition is the single most important thing for Kuno, especially in PvP, so you gotta stay aware, and that helps me, focus a little bit better when I don't see a million animations on my screen. I also crop my screen pretty aggressively, which boosts your frames per second, marginally, and I zoom fully out so I can see the max distance. So for the UI, at the top of my bar, I keep Dance Macabre, Ankle Cutter, and Crescent Slash, the core movement skills. You basically want to be spamming these 24/7, and it's good to keep them at the top so you're always staring at them. Then I slot Smokescreen, my Rebaum skills, Oni Shadow, and Tendon Cutter for like supplemental movement. And then I have Concealment, Moonlight, and Grab in the third row for utility. Concealment allowing you to immediately go into stealth. Moonlight is kind of an, uh-oh button for when you completely run out of skills to use in your combo. And Grab is obviously the best CC in the game, hands down. On the right side, I keep my filler damage skills, which are the Shadow Trio of Shadow Stomp, Shadow Explosion, Shadow Clone, Wheel of Wrath, and so on. What you really need to track, as far as your cooldowns are concerned, are your grab, block jump, Shadow Explosion, Ankle Cutter, and Crescent Slash. The grab and block jump are pretty self-explanatory. You want to know if you have those. And then for the preceding three skills, they can be used while on cooldown. And if you use them on cooldown, they will not be protected. Everything else is more situational and will feel pretty natural to keep track of in your head. It's also worth noting that I keep Commence, the E-buff, and Target Chase down at the bottom of my screen along with my V. And I can explain a little bit more into detail, but TLDR, having your V being able to be visualized already on your screen allows you to use it as an aggressive play. Like if I have my BSR, I know, okay, my V is up, I can go dive into the ball, and even if I get CC'd or grabbed or something, I can escape and continue playing.
Let's go over the buffs for the class and the rune gimmick. So I'll go ahead and put up icons here of all of the self buffs / debuffs that you can do on Kuno. I'd like to go over a few of them and just to kind of explain like what's important and what's not important. So with Target Chase and also Shackle Target as a Rebaum, they'll both activate the skill Target Chase. Basically, you won't consume stamina while sprinting for 20 seconds, which is really nice for just getting around and moving with the ball, mostly in Node War and things like that. And you basically always want to have this up. There's no reason to not have it up. The next one you're going to be constantly spamming is your side attack. Gives you the attack speed, right? That's really, really crucial. Don't spam it to the point that you're getting CC'd over it or that you're actually just burning your stamina constantly. But this is definitely one of the buffs that you want to have immediately before you're about to engage in a fight. Crescent and Tendon, with recent addition of Tendon, both have a plus 20 AP buff. It's worth noting that these buffs do not stack with each other, and they are something that you want to have up always. Unlike add-ons, all of Kuno's self-buffs, just like every other class, they don't require you to hit a target in order to proc. So basically, at free 20 AP, you always are going to want that. On your Rebaums, some of them will give you plus 12 to your evasion stat, which is nice, but it's not really a reason that you would use them in any situation, so I'd kind of tend to avoid them. The next is on debuffs. With Explosion, you get minus 20 DP, which is really, really, really nice, and it's why I like to start with Explosion in a lot of situations if I can before I'm going to engage to go ahead and drop the enemy down a little bit. And then 10% down attack modifier when you use Shadow Clone, which is huge. I think we may be one of the only classes in the game that really has such a strong attack modifier. So you definitely want to abuse that, as Kuno's down attack is probably her strongest add-on modifier. And it's worth noting here once again that none of these buffs stack with each other. So like specifically with Crescent and Tendon, the AP buff does not stack with each other. The minus DP buff from the Rebaums and Explosion do not stack. but they will stack with your add-ons, okay? So if you have, you know, down attack percentage on Shadow Clone and it has its own down attack, you will get 15% down attack modifier, which is very nice. Going over the runes, I'll just kind of explain what skills give what. So for the Ghost rune, you have Shadow Stomp, Ankle Cutter, and Crescent Slash. And for Soul, you have Shadow Clone, Shackles, and Foxclaw. And then for Spirit, you have Shadow Explosion, Tendon Cutter, and Fatal Blow. The way that Kuno works, you have what's called a Ninjutsu release. This happens where you have the 3 preceding runes active as indicated by little glowing orbs around your character, and the 3 icons will appear on your screen. When using one of your Succession exclusives prime skills, when you're using either Dance Macabre or Wheel of Wrath, it will consume all 3 of the runes to give you bonus damage on the skill, which is very, very crucial, and it's pretty much how you want to be playing the class always. As far as combos are concerned, you're kind of trying to weave your skills in such a way that you're building runes during the combo so that you can get a really big dance or wheel off. As far as damage is concerned, a triple rune Wheel of Wrath will always do more damage than a triple rune release Dance Macabre, so long as you're actually floating the target with the Wheel of Wrath, because Wheel of Wrath has air attack on it. There are certain combos that involve you air smashing with Shadow Clone that'll allow you to still proc the air attack from Wheel of Wrath, but just keep in mind that generally speaking, they do about the same damage to a target that's on the ground, specifically because Dance Macabre has down attack on it. So if you see somebody that's already CC'd on the ground, you're better off just hitting them with the triple rune Dance Macabre because it's protected. And if you're actually comboing somebody and you know that you're going to refloat them, Wheel of Wrath is always going to do more damage in that situation. So now that we've gone over the runes and the self buffs, a really good habit of getting into would be to pre-buff yourself before every fight. So that would be collecting all 3 of your runes and trying to stack your self buffs. And you can easily do that by doing Crescent Slash into Shadow Clone into Shadow Explosion, which will basically keep you fully protected while you're doing it. And that will build up some of your self buffs as well as all 3 of your runes. So that way, when you engage with your first Dance Macabre as a nice movement skill, you'll have a lot more damage chip on that skill. And then also make sure to just throw a side attack in there somewhere so that you have your attack speed buff, and then target chase and double jump whenever you have free time to collect your movement speed buff. All right, next let's discuss Rebaums, which ones to use, why I use them, and what they do. So I almost always use Oni Shadow in basically every form of PvP. It's very strong, it puts you into stealth, and every single time that you use an iframe, it puts you back into stealth. It's extremely taxing on your stamina, but you do want to use it over Oni Shadow. Oni Shadow is strong for specifically 1v1s because of the lingering blade trap, but aside from that, it's not very good. Assassin's Trail versus Heart Snatch is debatable. You could go 50-50 with this one. Assassin's Trail is more protected, but Heart Snatch does a little bit more damage, has a better debuff, and I kind of value the debuff and the instantaneous damage a little bit more than I do the 12 evasion. Ankle Splitter I basically never use outside of PvE. I almost always use Shackle Target, it procs Target Chase, and it's just a good protection and sets you up for your combos. Let's briefly go over add-ons here. So keep in mind the first add-ons I'm going to show you are for an evasion build, right? So as far as gearing is concerned on Kuno, you can definitely make either evasion or DR work. But I would say until you're at the point where you're maybe 820, 830, pushing 850 gear score, I would highly recommend just staying with a more AP focused build with DR. So going from top to bottom, there's nothing too out of the ordinary here. The only thing that I'd really like to point out is that I use Hidden Dagger Jutsu to keep up my defensive add-ons, because it is 25 seconds for the tier 3 add-ons, meaning your Hidden Dagger Jutsu has a 15-second cooldown. So essentially, as long as you can tag somebody with Hidden Dagger Jutsu, which is basically what you want to be doing on your engage anyways, you have the full defensive buffs up 100% of the time. The only other thing that I would add here is that I like to put damage reduction on Shadow Explosion because it stacks with the inherent 20 DR reduction that it already has on the skill. Going from left to right here to the next set of add-ons, this is for a DR build. Like if you're just running your typical add-ons here and you notice that I changed out the Hidden Dagger Jutsu for Foxclaw
just to give you more damage modifiers on your combos to push a little bit more damage. And then I changed crit rate onto Shadow Explosion instead of on Flash Slash for the damage reduction instead. Shadow Explosion has a very low crit rate, so boosting your damage by making sure that you have the critical rate up every time you're using the skill is going to net you a little bit more damage. And then having the damage reduction on Flash Slash will help you get out with the skill and engage with a little bit more survivability. Next up, I have capped add-ons. So this would be like, you know, your tier 1 node wars, that sort of thing. And the only interesting thing here is that I have HP recovery on Tendon Cutter. Kuno actually has absurd HP regeneration. Between Foxclaw, Shadow Clone, Tendon Cutter, you can get back almost like 30 to 40% of your HP with just those skills, and adding any more additional HP along with your elixirs that regen your HP, you can get a ton of HP back. And just note that I took away some add-ons that have no effect in capped content, like minus evasion, minus DR, that sort of thing. And then lastly, I have some PvE add-ons. I don't want to go into PvE in this video, but I'll go ahead and leave these add-ons here if you need just a generic idea. I would say keep in mind that there are certain spots where down attack is good, there are certain spots where back attack is good, and there are certain spots where neither are very good. So essentially, they've removed a lot of our capabilities with our add-ons by taking away the AP against monsters, as well as in the PvP add-ons, the AP against humans. So you're a little bit limited in what you can do. I will say my one tip for Kuno PvE here that I'll lit is that Shadow Explosion, you always want to be leading with this skill and using the minus 20 DR on it, because that'll allow you to effectively get minus 40 DR on whatever mobs you're attacking right off the bat. And then I use critical hit rate and attack casting speed on Hidden Dagger Jutsu, because that frees up all of my other add-on slots. Because once again, 20 seconds is how long the add-ons last. The skill's on a 15-second cooldown. You have these skill add-ons up 100% of the time if you want them. The rest of the add-ons you can put on there. I would say the one that I wouldn't change would be Foxclaw, is definitely where you want to put either back attack crit damage, back attack down attack, that sort of thing, because that's a skill that you can just repeatedly spam over and over again throughout your PvE combo, and having those modifiers to your damage is going to speed up your clear time.
So next, let's talk about the cancels for the class. There's several flows or cancels that you're going to want to get comfortable with as you're playing and getting proficient with Kuno. And speak briefly on why you would want to use certain cancels, because for a skill like Shadow Stomp, there's 5 different ways to cancel into it. Which cancel that you want to use in a given situation may depend on whether you want more protection, or there are certain combos or certain situations you might find that you just don't have time to actually do a full. Alright, so for cancels or flows, we have Smoke into Concealment. For Shackles, we have 3 different cancels. We have Explosion into Shackles, Shadow Clone into Shackles, and Foxclaw into Shackles. Next, we have Smokescreen can cancel into Flash Slash to make the CC come out faster and basically get rid of the wind-up animation for it. You can cancel Stomp with Smokescreen. You can cancel it with Shadow Clone, both of which give SA. Sometimes you might need to use Kunai Throw to cancel into Shadow Stomp, and that'll help you with certain combos where you might not want to CC somebody. Next, you can Ghost Step into Shadow Stomp, which is probably one of the most common ways to do it. You have the option to Floor Sweeping into Shadow Stomp in case you want to proc a down smash on somebody or fish for a down smash. And then lastly, you have Fatal Hard Aiming into Shadow Stomp. Okay, so the next thing that I want to go over is Fatal Blow and Hard Aiming. Alright, these are a little bit confusing. Essentially, the way it works is that in order to proc all 5 skills, you have to side attack into LMB RMB. You can see there that I only did a side attack into LMB RMB, and that procced the hard aiming and the flow of Fatal Blow. So you want to side attack, and then LMB RMB, and that basically flows into hard aiming. Then you can read in the tooltip here that generally it wants you to use hard aiming by pressing L and B, R and B out of stealth. And I'll demonstrate that here. And you can see that when I click L and B, R and B twice, you can see that both fatal blows and hard aiming, all three go on cooldown. So in order to do it properly, you want to side attack L and B, R and B twice, and then you can cancel into a Shadow Stomp for more damage, and that'll put all 5 skills on cooldown. Alright, the next cancel I'll go over is just something that you may or may never use. You can basically cancel any skill with Brace, which is your shift space input, which is your Kuno heal. The reason to do this over Ghost Step, as most of your skills are cancelable with either Ghost Step or Brace, is just that it's a little bit faster and doesn't move you. So if you're like comboing somebody and you need to cancel the skill mid-animation, Brace is a better option. Next, into Hidden Dagger Jutsu, you cast this skill by pressing F, and it has a forward guard on the animation, and then you can continue to hold F to teleport to your target, like so. Now, it's worth noting that you really want to cancel this by using a skill proceeding. So any skill into Ghost Step will allow you to cast it quickly. I use it out of Clone, and then iframe away, or out of Smokescreen to have a very fast range CC that can catch people off guard, and it leaves the window where you're vulnerable to a CC very short. Okay, so now that we've gone over the cancels and some of the flows and what all the skills do, that sort of thing, let's talk about some of the more advanced techniques that you're going to want to use on Kuno to really set yourself apart from just the average player. Alright, so for one, understanding how air smashes and down smashes work in this game is going to be crucial. Understand that whatever direction your camera is facing is the direction that the player will go when you air smash or down smash them. The reason this is important is because you will commonly air smash people with Shadow Clone, as it's a 100% proc if you float them beforehand. So that in mind, Kuno uses a lot of camera turning, and this is one of the situations where it's mandatory to use it. So here you can see if I air smash straight on, it sends a target flying in the opposite direction. Obviously, you're not going to be able to combo off that. So what you want to do is turn your camera as you click the Shadow Clone, and that'll keep your target in range for you to be able to combo. You can also do this from any float, so Shadow Stomp, Crescent Slash, Tendon. The next thing I'll show you is about your maximum distance engage. This is almost out of render distance. So what you want to do is Tendon Cutter into Ghost Step, into Hidden Dagger Jutsu Teleport, and that'll allow you to cover the maximum amount of distance. This is what it looks like from the other perspective. The next thing that I want to show you is when a target's Q blocking, you can ankle cutter past them into Ghost Step, into Shadow Stomp to get around their forward guard. Very good against Mooses, Meiwas, that sort of thing, and you can see this is from the other perspective. It's very hard to track and doesn't leave a lot of time to react. Now, noting on Tendon Cutter, okay? You have to camera turn Tendon Cutter in order to get around forward guard. You can see if I use it straight on against the target without camera turning, I simply hit their guard with the flow of Tendon Cutter. So what you want to do is turn your camera at the very last second, and then you will be able to teleport behind your target and float them. This is what it looks like from the other perspective. The next tech I'll show is using Smokescreen into concealment to land a grab that's very hard to track. This is great because your opponent can't really tell what's happening, as you can see from this perspective. And it's a reason why you need to be able to use smoke into concealment aside from just movement. Another tech option you can have is you can grab out of your double jump. So if somebody is playing range against you, you know, a caster or a ranger up on a rock, and you're within their region that you can grab them, as long as your crosshair is red, you can basically pull them down to you and kill them pretty easily. Next is with Hidden Dagger Jutsu, you can teleport vertically up to targets. So once again, this is another way that Kuno can kind of abuse range players. If they're sitting up top, you can just simply teleport to them and kill them pretty easily. So some things to note here would be your super armor skills. So Shadow Clone, Shadow Explosion will both allow you to regen stamina.
I would say block jump and lingering it is one of the best tools for regaining stamina because it gives you an iframe and allows you to, you know, look around without necessarily people knowing exactly where you are, like standing still is with an SA. And then it's worth noting that if you see I drain my stamina here, Tendon Cutter, while used stationary, like just moving it in place, not using the QW input, will allow you to regen stam. So sometimes you want to move with Tendon Cutter, sometimes you can use it in place if you need to get your stamina back. It's also worth noting that if I drain my stam here, you can see that if I move with Flash Slash, my stamina stops regenerating. If you stay stationary with Flash Slash, your stamina will regenerate. Some other tools that you can weave into are some of the cancels that I've gone over, like Smokescreen into Concealment with Ghost Step. You can see that you only lose the stamina drain from the actual Ghost Step itself. And you can use your Hidden Dagger Jutsu to teleport, and that will also not consume stamina. So you have quite a lot of ways to actually move without consuming stamina. Another option would be your Rebaums. So with Shackle Target and Heart Snatch, you can see neither of them take stamina. So that's kind of the key, right? Instead of me telling you exactly press these buttons in this order every single time, as you're doing your movement chain, you will notice that there are skills that you have to press in a certain order, and your quick CD skills like Ankle Cutter and Crescent allow you to use them more often because they'll be off cooldown more quickly, and then using your longer CC skills to regen your stam and kind of play neutral. And then I can give some examples of the movement. I'll go into it pretty in depth, but I just wanted to talk about the theory behind how you actually move on this class. So just remember that any series of movement will work, but prioritize your low skill cooldown skills first. And then as you're going in, start to think, okay, I probably need to use Clone and Explosion, and then block jump, linger it for a little bit, Tendon Cutter in place maybe, and then regain some of that stam, and then you can go into your more burst movement where you're, you know, going a little bit faster. Another thing that I'd like to note is on the use of stealth. So having two ways to get into stealth with either Oni Shadow or with concealment. It drains stamina as you walk. So if you're just walking around, you're fully unprotected and you're draining stamina. A common mistake that I see made by newer players is that they will go into stealth very early and try to use it to get into position, but this is not really what you want to be doing. Ideally, you are flanking the enemies from whatever PvP situation you may find yourself in, and you get into position and then use stealth at the very end of your movement chain. So an example would be, say that, we'll say that there's a player over here that you can see on my minimap. We'll say that I was trying to sneak up on him and I had a roundabout idea that he was over there. So I might do something like this, to where now I'm in position, I used significantly less stamina, I got there significantly faster, and I'm still in the same position. And it'd be worth noting to keep your terrain options available to you. So a really common thing that you'll see me do a lot of the times is I'll be going a very obvious direction, like say that I was going to go through this door, and then I'll immediately cut and go stealth around a corner, giving me this opportunity to either have people walk past me or just basically, you know, a lot of players are not much different than mobs. You can just de-aggro from them and then just go right back to what you were doing, and also using stealth as an opportunity to regen your stamina. So I would just advise to keep that in mind, that that's how you want to use it. It's more of a tool to get out of situations and set yourself up, not something that's free, because especially if you're in large-scale PvP, there's a lot of classes that have skills that can, you know, undo your stealth. So it's not really wise to just be casually walking around people, and a lot of other classes use their skills for movement as well. So you may just get CC'd randomly by some Musa who's just dashing around just because that's what his class does, or a hash or something. So now that we've covered some of the general tips on the theory behind movement, I'm going to show you some examples of some of my movement chains, and we can go over and break down exactly what I'm doing. And I also have some third-party footage to see what it looks like on my screen as opposed to what it looks like to your enemy, because I promise you the movement looks way more insane when you're watching it from a different perspective. Okay, so in the next clip that I'll play for you is going to be a full uninterrupted movement chain. I would say generally, if you've gotten really proficient at moving on Kuno, you should be able to stay protected for about 60 to 90 seconds, depending on how much burst you're using in your movement. You can either, bring it up or slow it down, however you want to do it, depending on the situation. But I find that usually being able to rotate your neutral for a full minute on a class is pretty good and enough for me to either engage or disengage in whichever situation I'm in. So the things to pay attention to here are the sequencing of the skills, how I'm ordering things, and then when I'm choosing to use skills like Shadow Clone and Shadow Explosion to try to regenerate some of the stam as well as Lock Jump. That's going to be key. And note that I haven't really incorporated it yet, but you can use your grab for movement now, since they added an SA to it. But I just honestly, I don't have the muscle memory built up to do that yet. The second clip I'll play for you will have myself doing a movement chain, and then I will play it from Erica's perspective so you could see what it looks like from another person's point of view.
Mhm.
time for the fun part, combos. So oftentimes people will ask me what's the best combo for Kuno, you know, what's the bread and butter combo, and there's really not a good answer to this question. There's a combo that definitely has the highest potential for damage that I personally like to use if I have the option to, and I'll show some examples shortly, but most of the time you end up using the same skills that you use for movement for your combos, so oftentimes you will run into the situation quite commonly where you've successfully CC'd somebody, but you know 75% of your skills are on cooldown, so what do? I, after a long time of CCing people and then just kind of staring at them on the ground, realized that you have to think of Kuno combos more in small segments that you can kind of chain together in different situations, as opposed to just thinking like, I'm going to do this same combo every single time that I see somebody. It's also important to understand the core methodology behind how Kuno's kit works. The core idea is that you want to float somebody, do filler damage, rotate an SA, float somebody, do filler damage, rotate your SA, and then get away with your Rebaums. The second part of the equation is at some point, if you haven't already, you want to be able to gather your runes so that you're finishing them with either Wheel of Wrath or Dance Macabre's rune release, which is your biggest damage. So as long as you're fundamentally achieving those two things, your combos will basically be fine. They might not be the most optimal or perfect for every situation, but it really doesn't matter. You just have to get comfortable with most of your skills being on cooldown during your movement chain, and that's going to be the difference between you killing people and not killing people. The third part of successfully using Kuno combos is when, in the terms of group fights, this is exclusively outside of 1v1s, is understanding that a lot of your filler burst damage, such as Shackles, Fox Claw, Wheel of Wrath, you know, some of your best damaging skills are unprotected, so you need to be able to weave them into your combo in a way that makes sense based on what's happening around you. The way you achieve all of these things together is simply having patience and a lot of muscle memory, right? It's much more ideal to get some damage onto a target and allow either your teammates or to just come back and try to CC them again than it is for you to be getting CC'd while you're comboing. This is especially important in smaller scale PvP like AOS, for example, where essentially AOS is often predicated on how long you can stay alive and not how good your damage is or how good you are as a player with your combos necessarily. A lot of times it just comes down to if you have 3 teammates that stay alive forever, all right, and don't constantly need to get peeled, you will kind of just win by a game of attrition, and that's very much in line with Kuno's playstyle as a whole. The other part of this is having good awareness about what's happening around you, right? If you find that you have tunnel vision on like a downed player or a free kill or something too often, that's going to cause a lot of situations where you get CC'd in the 1 second gap that you do have inside of your more higher damage combos. And it's basically going to invalidate the entire premise of you CCing them in the first place because it's all just wasted effort at that point. So a skill that you really need to develop is having awareness to what's going on around you and being able to put yourself into situations where people are not exactly expecting to have to peel you. A really good example would be that, and this is a general rule of thumb that I always tell people when I'm coaching and whatever, is if your enemy sees you before they are almost dead, you are doing it wrong. Kuno does have the capability now, especially with additional protection on Shadow Stomp, to do mostly protected combos, but the damage is significantly worse, and you really don't need to be 100% protected if you're playing the class correctly from a theoretical standpoint. So earlier I was talking about some examples of what I call segments or skills that I like to use in succession of each other. So a good example would be Shadow Clone into Shadow Stomp, Explosion into Shackles, Fox Claw into Shackles, Flash Slash into Crescent Slash. And lastly, it's important to note that you want to use your Rebaums in a specific sequence at the end of your combos to get the maximum amount of damage out, and also position yourself away from either getting re-CC'd or grabbed as somebody stands up if they do get up from your combo. So the ideal Kuno combo will meet the following criteria. You gathered your runes, you floated your target, you were able to get to a situation where you could use some of your unprotected filler damage like Wheel of Wrath or Foxclaw, and then you were able to use your Rebaums to position yourself to get that last bit of chip damage to secure the kill and position yourself in a way to disengage from the fight. As I'm going to go ahead and include engaging and disengaging in this section as part of this combo talk. The reason is that you need to come in really quickly and get out just as fast if you want to have any survivability on the class, as you can do sustained movement inside of large groups, but it's not really the purpose of the class. What you want to be doing is finding people who are unaware or mostly not paying attention to you, nuke them, and then disappear again. Essentially, the way I play the class, and I think the way that's mostly correct to play the class, is to be a nuisance. You aren't so much of an assassin, you aren't really killing like 100,000 people in a few seconds.
You're more of a very, very annoying presence around the enemy, and they just basically need to be complaining about you for you to be doing your job correctly. You know, essentially, if somebody messages me after a fight and they said that, you know, that, oh my God, my Rangers were crying because the Kuno was living rent-free in their ball the entire fight, I feel like I did my job. I want to make it clear the reason that I spent so much time on this section is because the combo ability of Kuno is the glue that ties everything together. You could be really, really good at the movement and really, really proficient at just enabling like the cookie cutter combos that I show you. But if you don't understand conceptually how to get your combos off inside of a fight, it's all for naught. And if you don't understand how to properly put yourself in the correct situation to actually land a kill off of one of your CCs and actually disengage from the fight equally, then you're also just throwing your life away for not much purpose. Let's get into the combo examples here. So this is my favorite combo to use, and it's the one that I try to get off if I have my skills off cooldown. I'll give you a few different use cases of it here, and I just want to make sure that I'm explaining this combo correctly, because earlier when I was talking about your air smash and it changing the direction of your target, it's really important that your camera turning properly when you do this. And you can see here on an actual target, I need to position them in order to give myself a chance to actually follow up on the skills. And then also note that I'm using my Rebaums to get away from the position, right? This is a decent grab combo that you can use. Once again, all the combos are going to be linked down below as far as the exact inputs and the skills associated. Flash Slash is always good to use constantly and gives you a lot of opportunity to get some good damage off in an AoE sense. And you can see here on a single target what that would look like. Notice here once again in a lot of these combos, I'm building my runes in the combo and then floating the target and then using the Rebaums to get away. Hidden Dagger Jutsu is probably one of my favorite engages to actually go into combos and start something off, and there's a lot of different ways that you can apply it. And now here's where we get to the fun part. So coming into your combo, how you want to position yourself, where your camera's looking. Notice that I have a tendency to look towards the other player, or the other dummy rather, and then going around a corner and going into stealth, right? I'm engaging, I'm dropping some damage, I'm using my camera to look around, I'm doing the combos, right? But the important part is how I engage and how I use my movement chain to get away and put myself into a situation where I basically disappear. Obviously, opening with Tendon Cutter can be very, very strong. It gives you an easy float on people who aren't paying attention. And then you can use your different skills like block jump, for example, in that sequence to reassess the situation and realize that you need to get out. And then just, this is kind of what it would look like if, let's say, I was going to stay in and just try to drop damage on multiple targets, right? Notice that I'm going back and forth between the targets and then getting away between them. Here, this would be like an engage out of stealth, right? Open up with Hidden Dagger Jutsu, and float your first target, have them on the ground, do some filler damage, rotate your SA and your movement, float another target, drop damage, drop more damage, use block jump to get a CC on somebody who's healing, continue to refloat them, drop damage, try to secure your kills while staying protected, and then use your Rebaums to disengage and get to a safe distance and stealth around a corner. Alright, so you made it to the end of the PvP guide. Where does that leave us? Thanks for watching to the entirety of the video. You're clearly 100% cut out for this class if you could listen to me yap about it for 45 minutes straight or whatever it ended up being. Some editor notes here. I didn't include a PvE section for this guide. I will make a PvE guide if there's enough attention for it, and I would say that Kuno is definitely viable as a PvE character. But understand that your build and your add-ons and that sort of thing are kind of going to be tailor-made spot to spot. So if you'd like to see me go over perhaps, let's say, you know, 3 of the best spots for Kuno and the build I'd use for each one of them, I could definitely make that happen. Or if you just want a more general purpose guide for PvE, let me know. I wasn't able to go into as much detail. I know, shocking, shocking, but I wasn't really able to give as much details as I would have liked in some of these sections for PvP stuff. Doesn't really make sense in the every form of PvP, so to speak. It would be much easier for me to make a more detailed guide and give some more specific examples if there was a specific form of PvP you guys are really struggling with. Node War, AOS, Guild League, GVGs, 1v1 small scale, they all function very differently to what your actual goal should be. So if you'd like to see that, let me know in the comment section. I'm going to take whichever comments I like the best and make the next guides off of that, so the power's in your hands on this one. There's so much that goes into this class, and it's really hard to fit 6 years of knowledge into a less than 1 hour video, and I feel like I did a good enough job explaining what you would actually need to know, but I'm toying with the idea of having an open Discord server to have people discuss builds, PvE, PvP, that sort of thing, post some clips. And then secondly, streaming, which would allow me to answer some questions on a more individual basis and go into a little bit more detail as to what I meant exactly and to clarify some things. So with that, you can expect to see another montage here shortly. I have plenty more clips laying around of some good old Kuno gameplay. And once again, I'd like to thank you for being here. And if you're subscribed, you know who you are. And with that, we'll see you on the next one.